Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Carla and I am in charge of the last segment of the Longview Public Library's Adult Summer Reading Program class, and we're going to be talking today about terrariums and how to put them together. And thank you for joining us. I'm so excited that we're doing this Facebook Live. If you have any questions, feel free and ask those questions and type those in, and we have Jenna off camera and she will stop and let me know if any of you have any questions, and I will try and answer those in the moment with you. This is the part of the Imagine Your Story, part of our Adult Summer Reading Program, and I thought a fun way to imagine a story would be through doing miniature gardening. Many of us have lots of different kinds of glassware and vessels that we can use that are around our house. You could open up any cabinet in a kitchen and you have Pyrex dishes, candle holders, anything that, mason jars, that you may have forgotten about, and put them aside, or you only get them out for a holiday. So the very first thing that we need to do to talk about terrariums is, what do you want to put your terrarium in? So there are two different types of terrariums. We have the closed, which is a typical terrarium, which is closed with a lid. Then these open ones that are open to the atmosphere with the plants are actually called terraria. And so it gives them more openness. I prefer the terraria, and of course terrariums, if you are using an aquarium and it's sealed and you have real lizards or any kind of other insects that you're wanting, of course you would want a lid on that. But we're not using real anything today, with the exception of moss. We're going to be talking about that as well. Some of the tools for success that we'll be using, or just to have on hand, and it's anything that you have actually in your home probably. Plastic spoons, some toothpicks, any kind of wooden poking device, scissors to cut up some moss, especially the sheet moss, which is a bit thicker. Paintbrushes. Paintbrushes are great to actually dust away some of the soil that's on something as you're putting your items inside the terrarium, so you can brush that out of the way. I put in a plastic knife just because I thought it could be another poking device depending on what you needed it for. So choose a gardening vessel. You want it to be clear. So that way you can see the different layers within the terrarium, and that's what makes it kind of unique and a focal point in any room. So we have the rock layer, and then we have the filtration, and then we have the soil. So I will break that down further, but open up those cabinets, use things that you have around your home. All of these were something that was in my home. So most of these are candle holders, actually. This is a candle holder, this one is as well, and these are as well. This was the only purchase that I made on a clearance sale at a hobby store, so a craft store. Inexpensive, and you want to wait for those sales and then use those coupons to save some money. So choose a jar. Sometimes you may have an area in mind that you want to display something, so be thoughtful about the size of container, or just choose the container and put it anywhere in your home. So once you do that, we're going to talk about layer one, which is the rocks. I made 24 kits here at the library, and they've all been picked up, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for participating with us on that. And everyone went home with a mason jar. So typically most homes have a random mason jar hanging around because you had homemade pickles or something, or tomatoes that have been canned or anything like that. So, and they're inexpensive as well. If you can buy a box of, I think, 12 for like $7. So there's that. But we're gonna deal with the first layer, which is the rocks. So all of you who have your kits, open up your kit and take out the instructions and take all of those pieces out. The only thing we need right now is the mason jar. You're gonna open that up, and inside of the mason jar there was actually, like, I think a little animal, and I had 3 different kits. I had one with a horse, one with dinosaurs, and then the other one was kind of an enchantment, whimsy, fairy-like items that were in that. Take those out. We only want the pea gravel right now. So of course, depending on the vessel, you want to choose the size rock that you want in the bottom. I have pea gravel, which I have for you guys, and I do want you to understand that anytime you use pea gravel in a clear vessel, you want to make sure you rinse it, because if you don't rinse it, it turns into mud. And if you're spritzing it with water and it gets slushy, and it's really gross. But it kind of ruins the feel of the terrarium. So I have water in here with some pea gravel just to kind of give you an example. And you're just going to keep rinsing it through until it gets as clear as you can get it. And then you'll put it on. This is actually the longest part. And all of you that picked up kits, your pea gravel has already been washed. So you can skip this step. But for those of you who are tuning in and trying to learn about how to put together your own, this is what we need to do. And you're gonna put it on newspaper or paper towels or paper plates, anything like that that gets it to dry. Put it out in the sun, it'll dry faster. But you don't want it to be wet because your terrarium should be dry. So there's that step. And same thing, if you're gonna be using a larger rock for larger terrariums, like I have here, in this example, you'll see the larger rock. And I used larger rock in this one as well. You can kind of see the very bottom of that. And for this terrarium, you can buy rock actually at your crafting store. It kind of can get expensive. Something like this is around $9, but you can go out in your yard, find rocks, wash them, rinse them. And even though they come in these containers, you still want to rinse them so that way you can get the nice colors, and they're going to be a lot clearer looking through that glass. So take the time to do that. Once you've rinsed it and it's dry, you put it in your vessel. Now, depending on the size of vessel too, sometimes these examples, I use these books as inspiration, which we have here at our library, and I hope you take the time to check them out if you're wanting to learn some more tips. You can use chemistry beakers, you can use all kinds of vessels, and they have really small openings. So pea gravel is going to be great, and you'll probably need a funnel in order to funnel the rock on the inside. But here we are. So the great thing about this mason jar is that you can shake it to try and create, and remember the rock layer is what's creating the landscape for you. So if you shake it, you can get that rock to settle and work carefully. And then you can use a spoon to kind of press it up against the glass. And it can kind of get, and this is the only way that you can get those hills or a different kind of landscape. And of course, the larger the vessel, the more room you have that you'll be able to use. Pea gravel is a little slipperier because it's tiny rock compared to the larger, but that's what we're going to use today. So once you have that landscape created, the second layer is the filtration system. And the filtration system is the moss. So in your bag, for those of you who have the kits, look in that brown paper bag that says moss, and there's 2 different types of moss in there. There's reindeer moss, which is the soft, fluffy kind, which is this, and then there's what looks like a big clump of dry moss at the bottom, and it looks kind of like cardboard or paper on So what you're going to do is take that part out, not the reindeer moss. We don't need that right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut, and all of you that have the kits, your size is already cut to size for the mason jar, so you can omit that step. And you're going to open it up a little bit. And by the way, moss is interesting because all of the moss you buy in craft stores that you see pre-packaged, like this stuff, is all dead. So it's dried and preserved so that way it can stay on the shelves. And so this technically is not live moss. At one point it was alive, but it was killed and preserved so we could purchase it and do crafting things like terrariums. Now there is a difference. I did bring some live moss today. We're not using it in any of the terrariums or the ones that I provided for you. But we'll talk a little bit more about that.
We do have a quick question, Carla.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Someone asked, can we paint the rocks?
Of course you can paint the rocks.
The rocks that go on the bottom.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about that when we get to the decorative portion of it, because that's where your creative juices can flow, and you can decide, you know, if you go to the dollar store and decide, I'm going to buy a package of horses, and you don't like the colors of them, you can paint them, and you can use acrylic paints, and then you can use a shellac after, and then it brightens it up. You can, of course, paint your rocks as well. So we have this, what's called sheet moss, and it's quite a bit thicker, and this is what we want for the filtration system. You don't want to use the reindeer moss because it's soft and fluffy, they're more tree-like. This is more like carpet. So what we're going to do is take a spray bottle of water. It needs to get wet, so just spray it front and back. And you don't want it to be drenched. So you're going to squeeze out any excess water from that sheet moss. And it's a big ball now, but you're going to open it back up. You're going to place it in your jar. And this is where your tools come in. So where'd my spoon go? There's my spoon. You're going to press it in to where it's covering the rock all the way around. And sometimes I take the crumbs and I just get those wet and put them in there as well. And press it in. Pokey sticks, wooden handles to spoons also help. And tweezers, long tweezers. I didn't have any of those. I might invest in some though. I think you can buy them on Amazon. But so once that's covered, you can see that is the sheet moss in there. And of course, if you have your own big package, you know, you could add more of that second layer, that filtration, if you want more green to show. Like for example, wipe my hand here. On the back of this one, you can see that filtration system right here. And it's a bit thicker. I was a little more liberal with that moss on that one. So, like I said, moss is interesting. There are 15,000 different varieties of moss. Some of them are technically not moss, even though they call them moss, like Spanish moss is not moss. And Irish moss is not moss. Scottish moss is not moss. And it's different because moss is a specific type of plant from the Bryophyta family. And they don't have a root system. They only have filaments. So it's like a spider-like little structure. And they only thrive on air and water. They don't need soil. So that's why you find them on root systems of trees, the trunks of trees, on rocks, things like that, between cracks and pavement. So it grows, and sometimes what you find in those, if you pull them up and they have a root system, that's not moss. it just kind of looks like it. But typically around tree trunks, you'll find it. But don't go into a national forest or anything like that and try and harvest your own moss because it's part of the ecosystem too. So do it, if you're doing it, hopefully you're just doing it in your own yard, or you have permission in somebody's yard to go look before you harvest your own moss. So the third layer is the soil. We are going to be using peat moss today. And those of you with kits have a little baggie like this. And hopefully you have a little spoon, plastic spoon, something like that. I don't recommend dumping it in there because you're probably going to have a lot more soil than you really need. So if you can scoop it out in some way, you're going to put that in there. And interesting, peat moss, the reason why we're using peat moss instead of like potting soil or anything, and this is actually decomposed sphagnum moss, which sphagnum moss a lot of the time is like this thick carpet-like moss. So it's decomposed, so it's kind of in the same family of mosses. So once you put that in, I'm going to use a little bit more of that. Not too much more, because I do want the trees and rocks to sit in, not sitting right up on top for this size jar. So you always have to kind of look at your jars and see how much of a level of dirt and rock you really want to create that landscape. Okay. So I'm going to push that in with the back of this scooper. Kind of created a little hill there. Kind of see the back of that. So it's interesting. So this peat moss used to be formerly living as well, a moss, and then completely decomposed. So once we have the soil, now's the time for the fun. So we have the reindeer moss. So in your bag, you can take out the reindeer moss. I did provide different colors of moss. So there was like a light tan, there was light green, a dark green, and purple. Now remember, all of that, because it is craft moss, it is dyed. So if you do spray water on it, you will get a little color on your hands, okay? But it does wipe off. So never fear. You're going to be good to go. But you'll create your moss, and I have the dark green and the light green. I'm not going to use the purple in this because I think I'm going to use the dinosaur lizards in mine. So you can choose whatever you'd like, and it tears very easily. So depending where you want it in your terrarium, you're going to gently place it in there. I have really small hands, so I don't really have a problem getting in there, but this is where the tools come in. So that spoon or that little poker or anything will help you get the moss in the places and the crannies that you want it in to design your terrarium. So you want to spray your moss with a little bit of water. And remember, don't over soak it, and you're going to squeeze out the extra water. And you're just going to place it in there. I might use the back of the stick actually so I can get it in there. It's so fluffy. That's actually too big of a piece, so I'm going to cut that. There we go. And keep adding. You're going to keep adding your moss, getting it a little bit wet with your water, squeezing it out, and continuing all the way around. Or if you like just two, then go with two. It's whatever you like. There's no right or wrong. But once you have that reindeer moss in there, and reindeer moss technically isn't a moss either, it's a lichen. So that's interesting too. But deer eat it, and it does grow on trees and things like that, like other mosses. So once you do that, then you have all of your trees in there that you want. Then you can add your decorative stones. Depending on what it is, the theme that you want to use, and this is where you can really get creative. Like somebody had mentioned painting the rocks. Is that okay? Absolutely, you can paint the rocks. If you're crafty, you can hot glue stuff. Those of you who picked up kits, I made something crafty for you guys, and one was made out of a cork. Of course, you can buy cork at any craft store. I had corks that I had from wine bottles that I took out, and then I ended up painting them, cutting them in half and painting them. And then I used those with bottle caps and painted the bottle cap. And here's an example of the finished one. That those of you with the enchantment kits got one of these. So I hot glued, after painting the bottom of it brown, hot glued the bottle cap and painted the bottle cap as well. Now I did use pliers to lift up the corners of the bottle cap, and I did that with both. So we had some for the dinosaur kits, and then we had some for the enchantment kits. But you can get creative. You can make anything that you like at home with anything that you have. So look at, and in the paper that I gave you guys, you can actually use anything, buttons, whatever theme you're going to use. If you wanted it to be a Harry Potter terrarium, you can make things, use your hot glue gun, paints, anything like that. And I have some examples of different pieces of things that you can use. Now, one thing that is super handy if you're looking for miniature things, if you go to the craft store and go to their bead section, you can buy beads and strings like this. You're going to cut them up, and they're ceramic, and then you can place them inside your terrarium. For example, I have a snowman here with a little holiday theme right here. I have a little dog in this one, and then I have some skulls in this one, something fun for October for me. But if you're wanting more enchantment things, I had, for some of you who had the enchantment bag, I provided, I think it was a ladybug, an owl, or there was a couple of things and some different ones. And those things go on sale too. So, and it's great because you get a whole lot of them on a string. So once you've decided what you're going to do, and for those of you who have the kits, it's pretty easy. You've got your kits together. You're going to put in your rock. So you can use pea gravel if you like to use rock, or you can use aquarium rock. I think this is what this is. Got this at the dollar store, and you can buy a big bag of it. And then there's also jewels, marbles, anything, all kinds of different things. So depending on what you want to create or how you want it to look, I think I'm going to use all the white. Pour that in there, and again, use your tools, and you can spread them out. You can use larger rock for some more interest. I don't think I really want to use the jeweled part for this, for mine. And then that's it. And then you can add your little creature. So those of you who have the horse or the dinosaur or the enchantment, you're just going to put your little creature in there. I have a little lizard that I'm going to put in this one. And there's that. Now, remember, terrarium. If you want, put the lid on it, and that is the terrarium closed. But if you want it to be open and have more of an atmosphere, then it's terraria. And if you're going to use the terrarium and you're going to seal it, hot glue something on top of that. You can decorate that, you can put ribbon around it and make it really pretty. Put it on a shelf, bookshelf, a windowsill, anything like that. So that's terrariums, and I hope you guys had fun. I had fun putting this together. If you drop your name down into the comments section of the Facebook page, then we can put your name in for a raffle. And I have a terrarium over here that the winner will receive that I put together. So if you do that, thanks for sticking around, and they will notify you and let you know who wins. Does anybody have any questions? Any more questions for anybody, Jenna?
There is a little lag time, so let's see if people do say so.
All right.
At the moment, no.
So
That's
everything
you
we
did
put in there though
awesome.
doesn't need watering or anything, right?
Not necessarily, no, because this is crafting moss.
Right.
So, but crafting moss does get really dry eventually. So you do want to take it out. You can do it like by itself, or just spray a little bit of water on there to hydrate it and make it floofy again. And then you're just going to take a paper towel and then dry all the water from around the edges of your vessel. But yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. But yeah, if you're using real live moss, of course. Unfortunately, the crafting moss doesn't ever grow because it's no longer alive. But real moss, if you end up using real moss in there, you do water it, it will grow, but it does need light, at least 2 hours of light if you use real moss from your backyard. And so you will spritz water in there, and that's why the layering filtration system is important. So that way, because if you use live moss in that sheet moss area, it will continue to grow up towards the light, and it will, the light hits through the glass and it will continue to grow, and then you could probably trim it back and using some tiny scissors, which people do in miniature gardening as well. In this vessel that I used fake plants, so just for interest and fun, and it would be really easy. Once you have your vessel completely done, you can take out these plants, because these are just pokies, little poke sticks, and then I can remove the salamander in there, and then I could make it a winter theme, or I could make it a different holiday theme. I could throw in some Christmas ornament balls, maybe a Santa in the center, or something like that, a sleigh. It would be really easy to change out the little miniatures in your terrarium as holidays change, or you get tired of looking at what you first started off with, and just make it interesting.
I don't see any questions, but I love that, like you said, whatever you gather, you can really get in a large quantity, and these would make great gifts at
Absolutely.
relatively cheap cost, and you can do it to people's personalities, like you said.
Yes.
So I think that this is,
Even book themed.
Of course.
If somebody loves Alice in Wonderland and that's their favorite book, then you could either locate something that's the Cheshire Cat,
Right.
and hide them in there, or the caterpillar, or it can be themed to a book if you'd like. But yeah, you can do so many things based on personality.
That's really neat. So no questions, but we have lots of people that are saying thank you. They love it. So well done,
You
Carla.
have those sheets available if they
I
want to
do.
get them, right?
So
Yes.
those of you who have the kits, there's no need to come in and get them because you already have them. But I did type up an information tool for those of you who didn't get to pick up a kit. Come into the library. We can print one off for you if you're interested to remember the different layers. And I do at the very end give you some ideas of different items around your house that you can use for terrariums. So there is that on there for inspiration and creativity. Well, thank you so much.
This is the last event for our Adult Summer Reading Club, so if you're participating in the Fantastical Journeys Event Challenge, make sure you log that online We will do a drawing on Monday for the last 2 raffles of those who participated. And thank you, Carla, so much.
Well done.